August 12, 1944. Near Falaise, Normandy, France. 6:40 p.m. The air smells of burning fuel. A column of German vehicles crawls slowly along a narrow country road, hemmed in by hedgerows on both sides. Trucks, half-tracks, horse-drawn wagons, tanks with low fuel. Everything is moving east, or trying to. Above them, the sky suddenly roars to life. Allied fighter bombers dive out of the clouds. Rockets streak downward. The first explosion rips through the middle of the column. A fuel truck erupts into a fireball. Men scatter. Drivers abandon vehicles. Horses scream as the road turns into chaos. Within seconds, the entire column is frozen in place. Because there is nowhere to go. Forward is blocked. Behind is worse. Inside one of the half-tracks, a German officer grips the edge of the metal frame, shouting orders that no one can hear over the explosions. The attack is sudden, precise, and relentless. The pilots above know exactly what they are targeting, not just vehicles. Escape routes. Because this is no longer just a retreat. This is a race against something far more dangerous. Encirclement. Just days earlier, German forces in Normandy had still believed they could stabilize the front. After the Allied landings in June, the battle had turned into a brutal struggle through the hedgerows of northern France. Slow, costly, but contained. German commanders believed they could hold, that the Allies would take months to break through. They were wrong. At the end of July, the Americans launched Operation Cobra, a massive breakthrough south of Saint-Lô. Heavy bombing shattered German defensive lines. Armored divisions pushed through the gap with speed few had anticipated. Suddenly, the battlefield changed. What had been a slow, grinding fight became something else entirely. Movement. Rapid. Unpredictable. Dangerous. General Omar Bradley watched the breakthrough unfold carefully. He understood the opportunity immediately. The German army in Normandy, particularly elements of Army Group B, under Field Marshal Günther von Kluge, was now vulnerable. If Allied forces could push fast enough, they could cut off the German retreat, trap entire divisions, and destroy them completely. To the north, British and Canadian forces under General Bernard Montgomery were pressing southward. To the south, American forces under General George Patton were advancing east. Two massive movements. Closing in. Like jaws. And in the middle of those jaws, tens of thousands of German soldiers were still trying to hold their ground. Back on the road near Falaise, the German column burns. Wrecked vehicles block the path forward. Soldiers attempt to drag equipment off the road. Some try to push damaged trucks aside. Others simply abandon everything and move on foot. The urgency is growing. Because rumors are spreading quickly through the ranks. The Allies are closing the gap. The escape routes are shrinking. And every road leading east is becoming more dangerous by the hour. In a nearby command post, German officers study a map under dim light. Red lines mark Allied advances from the north and south. The gap between them is narrowing. Falaise, Argentan, Chambois, names that now define the battlefield. If those towns fall into Allied hands, the German army in Normandy could be surrounded, cut off completely. Field Marshal von Kluge understands the danger. But the situation is already slipping beyond control. Communications are breaking down. Units are scattered. Fuel is running low. And orders from higher command remain inconsistent. Some divisions are told to hold their ground. Others begin pulling back. The result is confusion. And confusion, in war, is deadly. Meanwhile, Allied forces continue pushing forward. American armored columns move rapidly across open countryside. British and Canadian units press down from the north. Artillery follows. Supply lines stretch but hold. The tempo of the battle has changed. And the Germans are struggling to keep up. Back on the roads east of Falaise, the retreat is turning into something worse. Columns of vehicles stretch for miles. Some move. Many don't. Wreckage litters the roads. Burned tanks, destroyed trucks, dead horses frozen in place. The landscape itself is becoming a graveyard of retreat. And above it all, Allied aircraft continue circling, watching, waiting, striking. The soldiers moving through this chaos are beginning to understand something terrifying. This is not an organized withdrawal. This is a closing trap. And every mile they fail to move east brings the walls closer, because somewhere ahead, two advancing armies are about to meet. And when they do, the roadout disappears. August 15th, 1944. Between Argentan and Falaise. Late afternoon. The road is no longer a road. It is a line of wreckage. Burned out trucks sit at odd angles. Abandoned artillery pieces lie half sunk in the dirt. Dead horses, still harnessed to shattered wagons, block entire sections of the path. And through it all, German soldiers continue moving east. On foot. Because many no longer have vehicles. No fuel. No time. A young infantryman stumbles forward, clutching his rifle tightly. His boots are caked with mud and ash. Around him, columns that once moved in formation are now broken into fragments. Units are mixing. Officers shout orders, but few know who is in command anymore. The structure of the army is dissolving, and above them, the sound returns. Engines. Allied aircraft. Fighter bombers sweep low across the narrow corridor. They don't need to search anymore. The targets are everywhere. Rockets fire into the packed columns. Machine guns rake the roads. Explosions ripple from one vehicle to the next. A single hit can ignite a chain reaction, fuel trucks exploding, ammunition cooking off, flames spreading across everything nearby. Men dive into ditches. Some don't make it. Others lie still where they fall. The road becomes a killing zone. But the air attacks are only part of the danger. Because on both sides of this narrowing corridor, Allied ground forces are getting closer. To the south, elements of General George Patton's Third Army push north from Argentan. Fast. Aggressive. American armored divisions move along open ground, bypassing strongpoints, cutting roads, and isolating German units. They are not trying to hold territory. They are trying to close the trap. To the north, Canadian forces under General Harry Crerar, alongside British units, push south from Falaise. Their progress is slower. The fighting is heavier, but they are advancing steadily, village by village, field by field. Each step brings them closer to the Americans moving up from the south. Between these two advancing forces lies a shrinking gap. A corridor, at its widest, only a few miles across. And inside that corridor, an entire German army is trying to escape. Inside a temporary German command position, officers gather around a map. Field Marshal Gunther von Klug studies the situation in silence. Reports arrive constantly. Units cut off. Fuel shortages worsening. Allied armor advancing faster than expected. The realization is becoming unavoidable. The encirclement is no longer a possibility. It is happening. Yet even now, hesitation remains. Some German commanders still believe a breakout is possible. If they can push enough forces through the narrowing corridor, if they can hold the gap open just a little longer, they might save part of the army. But every hour matters. And every hour, the Allies move closer. Back in the corridor, the retreat has turned desperate. Columns no longer move in organized lines. Everything flows east. Vehicles. Infantry. Wounded soldiers carried on makeshift stretchers. Horse-drawn carts piled with supplies that may never be used. The road cannot handle it. Everything slows. Stops. Then surges forward again in uneven bursts. An officer climbs onto a wrecked vehicle, shouting above the noise. "Keep moving! Don't stop!" But it's impossible. The road ahead is blocked again. Another destroyed convoy. Another crater from an airstrike. Men try to clear a path, dragging debris aside with bare hands. Every delay feels fatal, because the sound of artillery is getting closer, from both directions. On the western edge of the corridor, American units begin cutting secondary roads. Small patrols move quickly, setting up roadblocks. Ambush positions. Machine guns covering escape routes. They don't need to stop the entire army. Just enough of it. Just long enough. Because somewhere nearby, the northern forces are approaching. To the north, Canadian units push through fierce resistance near Falaise. German rearguards fight desperately to slow them down. Every hill, every village, every hedgerow becomes a defensive position. Not to win, but to buy time. Time for the rest of the army to escape. But time is running out. As night begins to fall, the corridor grows even more dangerous. Fires from destroyed vehicles illuminate the landscape in flickering orange light. Smoke hangs low over the fields. The air is thick, hard to breathe, and movement becomes even more chaotic. Units lose direction. Some move in circles. Others stumble directly into Allied positions. The battlefield has become disorienting, confusing, a maze of destruction. And still, the gap continues to shrink. Near the village of Chambois, advanced elements of the Allied forces begin to close in. American units from the south. Polish and Canadian units from the north. Closer now than ever before. Only a few miles remain between them. Inside the corridor, German soldiers begin hearing something new. Not just aircraft. Not just artillery. Voices. Distant at first. Then clearer. Different accents. Different languages. Allied troops. Closer than they should be. The realization spreads quickly. The trap is almost closed. And once it closes completely, everything inside will be cut off. No fuel. No supplies. No escape. Some soldiers begin running. Not marching. Running. Trying to reach the eastern edge of the corridor before it disappears. Others keep moving steadily, too exhausted to do anything else. Some simply sit beside the road, staring at the chaos around them. Because deep down, they already know, they may not get out. And just ahead, near Chambois, the two advancing Allied forces are about to meet. August 19th, 1944. Chambois, France. 6 p.m. The sound of gunfire comes from both directions. Short bursts. Then longer volleys. Then explosions rolling across the fields. And for the first time, it overlaps. American machine guns from the south. Canadian and Polish fire from the north. Both firing into the same space. The same shrinking ground. On a narrow road just outside Chambois, a German column halts abruptly. Not because of wreckage. Not because of air attack. Because ahead, there are enemy troops. And behind them, there are more. The realization spreads slowly at first. Then all at once. There is no open road left. The corridor is gone. Inside a shallow ditch beside the road, a German officer lowers his binoculars. His face is grey with exhaustion. "What do you see?" someone asks. He doesn't answer immediately. Because what he sees is something no army wants to face. Allied troops on both sides. Closing in. At the northern edge of the gap, soldiers from the 1st Polish Armoured Division, under General Stanisław Maksek, push south toward Chambois. They have been advancing for days. Through resistance. Through confusion. Through constant pressure. Now they are within reach of the Americans moving up from the south. To the south, elements of the US 90th Infantry Division and armoured units are pushing north, fighting through scattered German resistance. Clearing roads. Seizing key positions. Every step bringing them closer to closing the trap. And, in between them, tens of thousands of German soldiers are still trying to escape. As the two Allied forces move closer, the battlefield becomes compressed. There is no clear front line anymore. Fighting breaks out in all directions. Small units clash in fields, along hedgerows, inside villages. Confusion spreads quickly. Because no one is entirely sure where the enemy is anymore. Only that they are close. Very close. Near Chambois, Polish forces seize key high ground, overlooking the valley. From there, they can see everything. The roads, the fields, the retreating German columns. And what they see is overwhelming. A mass of men and vehicles trapped in a narrowing space. Trying to move. Trying to escape. But with nowhere left to go. Polish artillery begins firing into the valley. Shells land among the crowded German formations. Explosions ripple through the chaos. Vehicles burn. Men scatter. But there is no safe direction to run. Below, German units attempt one last desperate push. Break through. Any direction. Any gap. A group of tanks forms up along a narrow road. Engines roar. The vehicles surge forward, infantry following behind them. They aim for the weakest point they can find. Because if they can open even a small hole, some might still escape. But the Allies are ready. American anti-tank guns fire from concealed positions. The lead tank erupts in flames. The second veers off the road. Infantry dive into the ditches. Machine guns open fire. The attack collapses within minutes. And still, more German units attempt the same thing. Small groups. Scattered formations. Trying to push through wherever they can. Some succeed. A few hundred men slipping through gaps in the line under cover of darkness. But most do not. Because the gap is no longer wide enough. At the center of the battlefield, near the village itself, the final link is forming. American units push forward cautiously. Polish forces hold their positions on the heights. The distance between them shrinks. Hundreds of meters. Then less. And then contact. Soldiers from opposite directions see each other across a field. At first, there is confusion. A pause. Then recognition. Allies. Coming from opposite sides of the battlefield. They wave. Some shout. Others simply stare. Because in that moment, something historic has just happened. The encirclement is complete. The Falaise pocket has closed. Inside the pocket, the situation changes instantly. Before, there had been hope. A chance to escape. Now, there is none. The remaining German forces are surrounded. Cut off from supply. Cut off from command. Cut off from any organized retreat. And the pressure does not stop. It increases. Artillery fire intensifies from all sides. Allied units begin tightening the perimeter. Systematically. Relentlessly. Every road. Every field. Every possible escape route is now covered. Inside the pocket, conditions deteriorate rapidly. Food is scarce. Ammunition is running low. Medical supplies are almost gone. Wounded soldiers lie where they fall. Because there is no safe way to evacuate them. German commanders try to organize resistance. But communication is broken. Units are fragmented. Orders don't reach their targets. And even when they do, there is often nothing left to execute them. What remains of the army is no longer fighting as a coordinated force. It is surviving. Individually. Desperately. As night falls over the battlefield, fires burn across the valley. Hundreds of destroyed vehicles. Broken equipment scattered everywhere. The landscape itself is transformed. From farmland into wreckage. And inside that wreckage, thousands of soldiers wait. Some still hoping for a miracle. Others already understanding the truth. The encirclement is complete. And what comes next will not be a battle. It will be a collapse. August 20th, 1944. Falaise pocket. Dawn. A thick fog hangs low over the valley. It clings to the ground, drifting slowly between burned-out vehicles and shattered trees. The air smells of smoke, fuel, and something heavier, something that lingers after days of relentless destruction. For a moment, it almost feels quiet. But then the artillery begins again. Shells whistle through the morning air, slamming into what remains of the German positions inside the pocket. Explosions ripple across the valley floor, sending dirt, debris, and fragments of metal skyward. There is no clear front line anymore. Only a shrinking space, filled with everything that had once been an army. German soldiers move through the wreckage like shadows. Some still carry rifles. Others drag wounded comrades behind them. Many simply walk. Slowly. Aimlessly. Because there is nowhere left to go. A sergeant kneels beside an overturned truck, trying to reload his weapon with trembling hands. His fingers are numb not from cold, but from exhaustion. Around him, men speak in short, broken sentences. Fragments of orders. Fragments of hope. Maybe tonight. They'll open a gap. We just need to hold. But even as the words are spoken, they feel hollow. Because everyone can see the truth. The pocket is shrinking. Food is almost gone. Supply trucks that once carried rations and ammunition now lie burned along the roads. Crates are scattered, many destroyed, others looted in desperation. Water is harder to find. Medical supplies, nearly non-existent. Wounded soldiers lie in makeshift shelters, some untreated for days. Their voices are quieter now, fading. Inside what remains of a command group, German officers attempt to restore order. Maps are spread across the hood of a damaged vehicle. But the lines on the map no longer match reality. Units have disappeared. Positions have shifted. Communication has collapsed. One officer points to a narrow stretch of ground. If we can push through here. Another shakes his head. With what? No one answers. Because the truth is simple. There is no longer enough fuel. No longer enough ammunition. No longer enough men organized into units capable of breaking through. The army inside the pocket is no longer a fighting force. It is fragments. Outside the pocket, Allied forces continue tightening the encirclement. American, Canadian, and Polish units coordinate their positions, closing every remaining gap. Artillery observers adjust fire constantly. Any movement inside the pocket draws immediate attention. Any attempt to regroup is disrupted before it can begin. The pressure is constant. Unrelenting. From the high ground near Chambois, Polish forces look down into the valley. What they see is staggering. Columns of destroyed vehicles stretching for miles. Blackened tanks. Abandoned artillery. Hundreds of bodies scattered across the fields. The scale of destruction is unlike anything they have seen before. This is no longer a battlefield. It is a collapse made visible. Inside the pocket, desperation turns into risk. Small groups of German soldiers attempt to break out during the fog, moving quietly, avoiding roads, slipping through hedgerows and open fields. Some succeed. A few hundred men managing to escape through thin points in the Allied lines. But most are caught. Machine gun fire cuts through the fog. Artillery lands ahead of them. And the attempts fail. Again. And again. A young soldier runs alone across an open field. No helmet. No unit. Just running. Behind him, the sound of gunfire. Ahead of him, uncertainty. He stumbles. Falls. Gets up again. Keeps running. Because stopping means something worse. But the pocket gives no protection. There is no direction left that leads to safety. Only different ways of being trapped. By midday, the remaining German resistance begins to fracture completely. Some units attempt to fight. Others surrender in groups. Hands raised. Weapons dropped. Exhaustion replacing defiance. In one section of the pocket, an officer gathers what remains of his men. No more than 20. He looks at them. Then at the battlefield around him. There is nothing left to command. He lowers his weapon. One by one, the others follow. The collapse is no longer sudden. It is gradual. Visible. Inevitable. Allied troops move carefully through the pocket, securing prisoners, clearing remaining resistance, advancing methodically. There is no rush now. No need. The outcome is already decided. By the afternoon, organized German resistance inside the pocket has effectively ended. What remains are isolated groups. Scattered. Disconnected. No longer part of an army. And across the valley, the signs of what has happened are everywhere. Vehicles piled along roads in long broken lines. Equipment abandoned where it stopped working. Fields torn apart by shellfire. The ground itself marked by the final moments of thousands of soldiers trying to escape. What had once been a powerful German force in Normandy has been destroyed. Not in a single moment, but in a tightening space. Under constant pressure. Until nothing remained. And as the fog begins to lift over the valley, the full scale of the encirclement finally becomes visible. August 21st, 1944. Falaise, Chambois sector, France. Morning. The fog has lifted. What it reveals is almost beyond comprehension. The valley stretches outward under a pale sky, but the ground is no longer farmland. It is covered in wreckage. Burned-out tanks sit at unnatural angles. Trucks lie overturned in ditches. Artillery pieces, twisted and abandoned, point silently toward nothing. And everywhere, the remains of what had once been a retreat. Allied soldiers move slowly through the area, carefully. Because even now, there are dangers. Unexploded shells. Damaged vehicles that could still ignite. Isolated pockets of resistance. But mostly, there is silence. A Canadian soldier pauses on a ridge, overlooking the road below. For a moment, he doesn't move. Because what he's seeing isn't just a battlefield. It's the aftermath of an entire army collapsing in place. Columns of destroyed vehicles stretch for miles. So dense in some areas that they block the roads completely. A single glance tells the story. This was not an organized retreat. This was something else. Nearby, American troops begin gathering prisoners. Groups of German soldiers emerge from the hedgerows. Hands raised. Weapons discarded. Some walk in silence. Others look exhausted beyond words. Many have not eaten properly in days. Most have no clear idea where their units are anymore. Because those units no longer exist. Estimates begin forming quickly. Tens of thousands of German soldiers have been captured. Thousands more killed. Even more wounded or scattered across the countryside. And the equipment losses are staggering. Hundreds of tanks destroyed or abandoned. Thousands of vehicles left behind. Artillery pieces, ammunition, fuel all gone. What had once been a functioning army is now reduced to fragments. Among Allied commanders, the significance is immediately clear. This is not just a victory. It is a turning point. General Omar Bradley studies the reports as they come in. The destruction of German forces in the Falaise pocket has done something critical. It has broken the enemy's ability to hold a stable defensive line in France. What remains of the German army is now retreating disorganized, weakened, and without the resources to rebuild quickly. To the north and south, Allied units begin advancing again. Faster now. With less resistance. Towns fall quickly. Roads open. The momentum that had been building since Operation Cobra now accelerates dramatically. For German commanders, the consequences are severe. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge, already struggling to control the situation, faces the collapse of his entire position in Normandy. Shortly after, he is replaced. The command structure shifts again. But the damage is already done. No change in leadership can reverse what has happened inside the pocket. The loss is not just material. It is psychological. German forces that had believed they could still stabilize the front now face a different reality. The Allies are no longer contained. They are advancing, rapidly, relentlessly. And there is little left to stop them. Within days, the retreat becomes a general withdrawal across France. German units fall back toward the Seine River. Then beyond, trying to regroup, trying to form new defensive lines. But they are doing so with fewer men, less equipment, and far less confidence. For the Allies, the effect is immediate. Paris, which had been under German occupation for years, is now within reach. Supply lines stretch forward as armies move faster than expected. The war in Western Europe, once predicted to last much longer, begins accelerating toward its final phase. But on the ground in the Falaise pocket, the reality remains visible. Soldiers continue moving through the wreckage for days, clearing roads, recovering equipment, counting the cost. A British officer writes later that the destruction in the pocket was so extensive that it seemed as if the battlefield itself had been crushed, not by one single battle, but by pressure, constant, relentless, until everything inside gave way. Because that is what the encirclement had done. It had not destroyed the German army in one moment. It had trapped it, cut off its movement, cut off its supplies, and forced it into a space where survival became impossible. And once that space closed completely, the collapse came quickly, just as it had been feared, just as it had been predicted. The Falaise pocket would be remembered as one of the most decisive moments of the campaign in Normandy, not because it was the largest battle, but because of what it changed. An entire German army had been crippled, its ability to fight in France shattered, its retreat turned into destruction, its resistance broken under pressure it could no longer withstand. And from that moment forward, the outcome on that front was no longer in question. Because sometimes in war, victory does not come from a single strike. It comes from closing every path, applying pressure from every direction, until the enemy has nowhere left to go. And in the fields between Falaise and Chambois, that is exactly what happened.